Hello, thank you for taking a moment to watch this video, and on this specific training we are continuing our Zapier training on how to get a call from PhoneBurner, the recorded call from PhoneBurner into Zapier, and we're pushing that data over to in this example, Gong. Obviously, you can use any external system, any system that you want to analyze that call recording, but we're going to use Gong, and so all of our training is specific to getting that recording over to Gong. And so we're actually going to start our final step, which is actually pushing the data into Gong. So we're going to create a new step, and you might think at this point that we just go ahead and search Gong. The only problem is none of the options when we're going to push something over to Gong right now will actually allow us to add a new call into Gong. So we can't actually use the Gong action right now. So we're going to go ahead and change that, and we're going to use the Webhooks by Zapier. Surprise, surprise, here we are using Webhooks again in this Zap. So we're going to choose Webhooks by Zapier, and then the event is going to be a custom request. We're going to hit continue. And the method is going to be a post. And the URL that we're going to hit is going to be this api.gong.io v2/calls. That's the endpoint that we're hitting. And we can find this information by going to Gong. We can go here to PhoneBurner settings. Now, of course, you have to be a technical admin to be able to view your team's settings. Of course, mine is PhoneBurner settings, but yours is going to be your company settings. We're going to go to the API option here, and we're going to click on View API Documents. Go to Add New Call, and you'll see that's the endpoint. So we're sending it to api.gong.io and then that endpoint, right? And then we need to be able to post the specific data to Gong, right? So let's jump back over to Zapier. For data pass-through, we're going to leave that empty. We're going to go to the data option. Now, the data option is going to be the most complicated, right? Because this is the actual payload, the information that you're sending over to Gong. And so I've got a notepad here that just kind of identifies the key pieces that we need to send over. Obviously, if we go back to their API, you can see there's a ton of options that you can send. But we're just going to use this bare minimum, and we're going to throw this in here. Now, I do want to point out that you can't just paste this in here, and of course I'll make that file available to you. You can't just paste this in here and be done with it, because there's key elements, key pieces of information that have to be captured from all of the steps before this to be sent over to Gong, right? We can't just send, there can't just be generic information here, because everybody who uses this is going to use it slightly different, right? Your data is going to become over, the fields are going to be labeled differently, dial session IDs, things are going to be different. So you're going to have to come in here and make some edits. And so let me show you how we're going to edit this. We're going to take this dial session ID. So the first thing we need is we need a unique ID, a client unique ID. Client meaning a unique ID from the PhoneBurner system. So we're actually going to take two pieces of information that we received in step one and combine them into the client unique ID. So we're going to delete dial session ID, and we're going to replace that with the information we received here for dial session ID, right? We want to take the ID from the dial session that we were in and insert it there. I'm going to leave that little dash in there, indicating that now we're going to insert the call ID. And so we're going to do call ID. So we're going to create a unique ID every time we post a new recording over to Gong that's based off the dial session and the call ID, the dial session ID and the call ID. And so moving on to our next option or item is the actual start time. When did this call start? You'll notice I've got date t time dash 00:00. We're going to take the date, we're going to remove that. And remember how we went into, let's go back. Remember how we did the text formatter where we separated the date and time? So we're going to take the date. That's going to be inserted there. We're going to leave the capital T And we're going to replace time with, let's see here, output item number 2, which is the time. And we're going to leave the -00:00. So actual start time is going to be date and time that we got from the formatter into those 2 spots there. So the next one is primary user ID. This is the actual user ID that this recording needs to be assigned to in Gong, right? Or something to that effect. So we're going to go back here in Gong. Let's go to, actually let's go team, phone burner settings, company settings, I guess is a proper way of saying that. We're going to go to team members. And on the team members, I'm going to identify the team member. I'm going to choose me. Once that loads, you'll see this user ID up here at the top. I'm going to grab that user ID. I'm sure there's another place that you can find this, but this was the easiest place for me to find it. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to replace user_ID with that number. Okay, so the next one is parties. We're going to do user ID. And we're going to replace user ID here, user_ID with that same number. Everything else is going to remain the same there. Direction is going to be outbound. Download media URL, right? So this is the step 3 output. What did we get in step 3 when we process that recording? So I'm going to replace that with the output from step 3. And then the final option is the title of the recording. This is something you can do whatever you want with, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert the agent's first name. So I'm going to delete agent first name. That's just kind of a placeholder. And I'm going to go in here and find agent first name. So the agent on the phone burner side, you know, the person who made the call, and their last name. And then called, so that's a word I'm going to leave in there, called contact first name. So delete that. Contact first name, right? And then I'm going to delete contact last name. Contact last name. Contact user ID, so this is the specific ID, the record ID on the phone burner side. So we're going to go ahead and grab contact user ID right there. And the outcome was, and I'm going to insert the status. What was that call outcome? Right, so let's go status. Oh, see if I can type. And remember, I clicked the not interested button. So there we go. So I'm going to send over to Gong this information, this specific payload. And of course, this payload is going to be different for every call because we're going to have a different dial session ID and call ID. Well, dial session IDs are not going to change all the time, but call IDs will be unique every time. But we're going to merge those together, create a unique ID to get sent over. We're going to get the call start time, assign it to a specific user, send the file over, and add a title. So once we've done that, once we've mapped all of that stuff, once we've mapped all of those pieces to the payload, now we need to go down here to where it says unflatten. I'm going to leave that set to yes. I think it's set there, yeah. Basic authorization. So we need authorization in order to push that recording into the Gong account. I need authorization, right? So we're going to go back to Gong. We're going to go back to the company settings. We're going to go back to API. And right here where it says get API key. And we're going to copy our access key. We're going to paste that into the basic auth. Then we're going to add a straight line, straight up and down line. And then we're going to go back here and we're going to get our secret. We're going to copy that secret. And we're going to paste that after that line. So we should have our authorization key and the secret that goes along with it. That's essentially like a username and password. Then the last thing here is our headers. We're going to set the headers to content type application/JSON. Once we've got all that in there, we're going to go ahead and hit continue. And we're going to test and review. Now, that information should have been posted over to Gong. So let's jump back over to Gong. Let's go to calls. And here you can see the call that we just pushed over from Zapier is now listed in our Gong account. Now, keep in mind, it may take a few minutes for new calls to show up in your Gong account. So give it some time. Don't be stressed if it's not there immediately. But anyway, that's it for this particular training. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and happy dialing.